Hello there and welcome to our nightly news program, coming to you live on All 24 News from Algiers. Next are the headlines. An agreement to set the second half of next June as the date for President Tebboun's visit to France as part of a phone call between the Algerian and French presidents and the Algerian presidency affirms the work is underway and continues to make it as a success. And in the developments of the situation in Sudan, the number of casualties in the confrontations between the army and the rapid support forces has risen to more than 400 dead and about 4,000 wounded, and countries are intensifying the evacuation of their nationals before the expiration of the declared truce deadlines. Also ahead in our news, Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesman condemns the position of U.S. Secretary of State over the U.S. commitment to disrupting the Iranian military program. Also coming up, on the eve of an upcoming meeting between Guterres and Lavrov, the G7 warns against using food as a weapon and calls for the extension of the grain export agreement across the Black Sea. And Medvedev confirms the cancellation of the agreement if the group adopts the decision to ban exports to Russia. And China has lodged a complaint with South Korea's ambassador to Beijing over totally unacceptable remarks by the South Korean president about Taiwan, expressing strong dissatisfaction. Hello again and welcome to the program. First off in our news, on Sunday, Algerian President Mr. Abdelmadjid Tebboune received a phone call from his French counterpart Emmanuel Macron. According to a statement by the Algerian presidency, the two presidents discussed bilateral relations and ways to enhance them. The same source added that the two presidents agreed on the second half of next June as the date for President Tebboun's state visit to France, as work is underway and continuous by the two countries to make it a success. Tunisian Ministry of Foreign Affairs confirmed in a communique posted on Saturday evening that there are no new or additional procedures regarding the conditions for entry to Tunisia. This comes at a time when the country hopes to revive its tourism sector as the summer season approaches. Sahar Farjani reports.
Tunisia denied on Saturday that it had imposed new procedures regarding the entry of Europeans into the country after what was previously mentioned by media reports. The Tunisian Ministry of Foreign Affairs confirmed in a statement that the conditions remain the same and the entry of all travelers to the country through various crossings, whether by land, air or sea, is accepted as it was in the past years. The same source added that all Tunisian authorities continue to provide the best conditions for receiving tourists from all brotherly and friendly countries, and all facilities are provided for their good stay and safety. Indeed, this serves as a beneficial promotion for tourism in Tunisia, whose revenues in the first quarter of 2023, according to Central Bank, increased to exceed 1 billion Tunisian dinars, equivalent to about $326.7 million. Hence, this vital sector achieved a growth in revenues of 64.4% compared to the same period in 2022. With the approaching of this summer season, and in the face of the economic difficulty, Tunisia aims to restore the strength of its tourism sector to before the COVID pandemic era, when it received more than 9 million tourists and high GDPs.
Moroccan bodies and organizations have warned of serious repercussions of the drought waves on the economy. Members of the agricultural sector, have raised appeals to contain the situation before the disaster strikes. In addition, a World Bank report stated that the scarcity of rainfall will significantly affect agricultural production.
Rainfall shocks explain 37% of the volatility of the GDP growth in Morocco, given their impact on agricultural production. Drought alone last year accounted for nearly half of the country's 12% slowdown.
To a different development now, Algerian Foreign Ministry announced in a statement that Algiers strongly condemns the terrorist attacks that took place on Saturday in the area of Severi Airport in the Mopti region, which caused several victims among Malian soldiers and civilians. The statement of the Algerian Foreign Ministry presented the sincere condolences to the government and to the people of Mali, assuring the families of the victims of its compassion and wishes of a speedy recovery to the wounded. Moving on to a different topic now, the Malian army said 3 soldiers were killed and 6 others wounded following the crash of a military helicopter on Saturday while it was returning from an official mission as part of the anti-terrorism operation. The Malian army said the chopper crashed in a residential area in the capital Bamako, near construction sites. The transitional government in turn said in a statement that the chopper returned from a monitoring mission, stressing that it had taken all measures to assist the injured, condoling the families of the victims. In Africa still, Burundian Justice Ministry stated on Sunday that former Prime Minister Alain Guillaume has been arrested. Bonyuni was arrested in Burundi's capital, Bujumbura, on Friday. However, the statement did not specify where he was being held or the charges he would be facing. The country's Human Rights Commission tweeted representatives had visited Bonyuni in detention and stated that he had not faced any abuse. Guillaume was Prime Minister from June 2020 to September 2022 when he was sacked after the president accused unnamed people of planning a coup against him. Somali army announced on Monday the launch of new military operations against strongholds of Al-Shabaab movement linked to Al-Qaeda terrorist organization in Galmudug province, the center of the country. Local media quoted a statement by the army in which it explained that the operation came in cooperation with the popular resistance and targeted strongholds of the movement's militants in Al Kwanza area, pointing out that Somali forces were able to destroy sites belonging to the movement's members and arrested 5 of them. The military operation came a few hours after the army forces thwarted an attempt by gunmen targeting a military base in the Maskwai area of the Galgaduud district. Over 400 people have been killed in Sudan as the conflict continues between the Sudanese army and the Rapid Support Forces. Injuries have surpassed 3,500, while countries are racing against time to evacuate their nationals from the country. Osama Ayadi reports.
The Sudanese conflict continues for the 7th day as the Rapid Support Forces and the Sudanese army continue their clashes in the capital Khartoum and numerous other cities in the country. The conflict left at least 413 people killed and 3,551 others wounded. At a time when international community calls for a humanitarian ceasefire, civilians in the capital Khartoum remain inaccessible to electricity or water supplies, with dwindling basic food needs amid the still festering conflicts.
Suffering of lack of food, lack of electricity, lack of water. We do not have electricity for 3 days now, and also we do not have access to water since last Saturday, but we are drinking from wells here in Khartoum.
After a week of strife, many people have been evacuated from the country, including Saudi nationals and people from other nationalities who found refuge in Jeddah, as the conflicting parties have agreed on a short-time truce. For their part, the US and UK deployed thousands of army personnel to evacuate staffs of their embassies in Sudan, including family members of the embassy workers.
Last night, the British military conducted an evacuation operation of British diplomatic staff and the dependents from Khartoum, using elements of 16 Air Assault Brigade, the Royal Air Force and the Royal Marines. Over 1,200 people contributed to this operation. It was dangerous and precarious, but nevertheless we managed to use both C-130s and A-400 aircraft to go in, collect our diplomats and their residents and fly out to safety.
The US and the UK also invited members of the UN Security Council for a Sudan-focused meeting to discuss the continuing deterioration of the military and humanitarian situation in the country. The US-British request calls for holding an official open session for the Security Council on Tuesday in concern of the situation in the Middle East. However, the official Sudanese mission strongly objects to holding this session and insists on keeping the Sudanese conflict as an internal matter.
The Zionist occupation forces on Sunday closed all entrances to Jericho for the 2nd straight day. According to the Palestinian news outlet, the occupation army set up military checkpoints at all entrances to Jericho impeding the movement of citizens, while the southern entrance to the city witnessed clashes on Sunday morning, during which the occupation soldiers fired tear gas at citizens. A 19-year-old Palestinian man died of serious injuries he sustained as a result of a shooting crime committed by Zionist forces in the city of Jaffa 2 days ago. The Zionist forces also launched a series of arrests on Sunday. The occupation soldiers arrested a number of citizens in the West Bank and Al-Quds at a time when they imposed strict measures and impeded the movement of citizens at checkpoints, according to local sources. Military leaders of the Houthi group in Yemen said the situation in the country is heading towards calm and reaching a comprehensive peace, but the same parties warned that any regression in the understandings reached regarding stopping the conflict would lead to a deadlock. Islam said with more.
Despite the positive development on the discussions about the crisis in Yemen, tensions have risen again as leaders of the Houthi group issued a warning to Riyadh against any retreat from the agreements that were recently reached in Sana'a talks. Officials from the Houthi military affirmed the situation is heading towards common peace, but that depends on what they called a sincerity of intentions.
The situation is heading towards calm and reaching a comprehensive peace at this moment, and this all depends on the sincerity of the intentions of the leaders of the coalition with what has been agreed upon with the revolutionary leadership and the Supreme Political Council, and on adherence to these understandings for the benefit of the region and its people. We warn against the circumvention and maneuvers in dealing with these understandings, because any veto or evasion will result in loss and will lead us into an endless impasse.
While the Houthi group announced the end of negotiations with the Saudi delegation in Sana'a, confirming that progress had been made in some issues, fears over returning to ground zero and blowing up the country's crisis even more have doubled after recording deadly attacks and bombings in southern Yemen, including the ones by Houthis, according to Yemeni sources. This comes as the country's security situation witnesses fragility since the announcement of the U.S. Special Envoy to Yemen, Hans Grudenberg, last October, that the Yemeni government and the Houthis had not reached a common ground to achieve a long-term truce, which have lasted for 6 months, amid international endeavors and UN efforts to achieve a peace plan in the country.
Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesman Nasser Kanani condemned the position of UN Secretary of State Anthony Blinken over the U.S. commitment to disrupting the Iranian military program. Anthony Blinken had stated that Washington is firmly committed to disrupting Iran's military procurement activities, which the Iranian spokesman considered a provocative stance aiming at continuing to market for U.S. weapons. Kanani added that the U.S. State Secretary statements aimed at fueling the conflict by what he called fomenting the failed project of Iranophobia and creating division among regional countries. Kanani indicated that the Iranian military program is defensive for deterrence only and is not directed at any country that does not intend to target Iran.
Contact and coordination with the United Kingdom, Israel.
The G7 foreign ministers alleged that Russia was using food as a weapon in its conflict with Ukraine and demanded that the grain export agreement be fully implemented. Moscow has responded by threatening to sever the Black Sea grain agreement, which permits crucial grain exports from Ukraine. Here's Sofyan Kinturi with more.
Climate change, pollution, the loss of biodiversity, health and food were the main topics on the G7 foreign ministers' agenda for the last week's annual meeting in Japan. In the statement issued by the Group of Seven, foreign ministers accused Russia of using food as a tool for destabilization and demanded that the crucial Black Sea grain agreement, which is used to export Ukrainian goods, be fully implemented and expanded.
We condemn Russia's attempts to use food as a means of destabilization and as a tool of geopolitical coercion, and reiterate our commitment to acting in solidarity and supporting those most affected by Russia's weaponization of food.
According to the same source, the group also stated that they stand ready to assist the recovery and reconstruction of Ukraine, including by contributing their expertise in demining of agricultural land and the reconstruction of agricultural infrastructure. On the other side, Russian former President Dmitry Medvedev confirmed that his nation will cancel the agreement to export Ukrainian grain through Black Sea if the Group of Seven banned the flow of exports to Russia.
This idea from the idiots at the G7 about a total ban of exports to our country by default is beautiful, in that it implies a reciprocal ban on imports from our country, including categories of goods that are the most sensitive for the G7.
For its part, Moscow has repeatedly rallied against the terms of the Black Sea grain deal, the only significant diplomatic breakthrough of the 40-month conflict in Ukraine. It had said it will walk away from the initiative ahead of the May 18 deadline if the West does not lift a restriction on Russian agricultural and fertilizers exports.
Moscow said on Sunday the U.S. has failed to grant visas to accredited journalists from the media pool traveling with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. The latter has expressed anger over the matter while Russian officials vow to retaliate against U.S. journalists in Russia. The Russian Foreign Minister blasted the withholding of visas as stupid, exposing the true worth of Washington's, quote, oaths about protecting freedom of speech and access to information. Russia's top diplomat added that the truth which Russia will present during the Security Council meeting will provoke much more interest across the whole world than the alleged and filtered information thrown out by Western colleagues, as he put it.
Of course, I understood how notorious our American colleagues are for. Such things, but I was sure that this time, given the attention that was drawn to their ugly behavior, everything would be different, but I was wrong.
The Russian Ministry of Defense announced on Sunday that its forces had succeeded in controlling more lands in the strategic city of Bakhmut in eastern Ukraine. The ministry said in a statement that the control of Bakhmut will facilitate its progress in eastern Ukraine, adding that its forces have taken control of 2 new residential blocks in the city, and that reinforcements in the north and the south will be provided by airborne units. Meanwhile, the Russian Wagner Group commander said his forces control 80% of Bakhmut. In a different development, Chinese Vice Foreign Minister Sun Weidong has lodged a complaint with South Korea's ambassador to Beijing over totally unacceptable remarks by the South Korean president about Taiwan. And he also expressed strong dissatisfaction, according to China's foreign ministry. And in an exclusive interview with Reuters agency, South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol said increased tensions around Taiwan were due to attempts to change the status quo by force, and he opposed such change. Thousands of migrants detained for months in southern Mexico formed a new caravan in protest on Sunday that has about 3,000 migrants, some from China and other Asian countries, to head for the capital to speed up their applications for U.S. asylum. The migrants, mostly Venezuelans, started their march north early in Tapachula, the city bordering Guatemala, whose detention centers have been overwhelmed by their vast numbers, as some said they expected to reach Mexico City in about 10 days.
We have to move and keep forward for our dream because I departed with dream because my wife is 4 months pregnant. This is my dream, to arrive to the United States and give it all to my daughter.
In Latin America still, former Peruvian President Alejandro Toledo returned to Peru from the United States on Sunday and will likely become the 3rd head of state to be imprisoned as the South American country seeks to shake off years of corruption by its rulers. Toledo will likely serve his sentence inside a police base on the outskirts of the capital, Lima, where former Presidents Alberto Fujimori and Pedro Castillo are also held.
We want fair justice for Alejandro Toledo. We know about him and his situation, and he's under investigation. Yet, he's arrested, and under this dictatorial government, he's been extradited. Peru has an illegitimate government.
Dozens marched on Saturday against controversial social and economic reforms of leftist President Gustavo Petro that have kept opposition groups on the warpath. Protesters waving Colombian flags and signs against the president headed to Bolivar Square in the capital city Bogota's downtown, where they are to hit out at the Congress, where reforms are under discussion. As critics have said, the reforms risk hurting job creation, capital markets, and public finances.
reformas son pésimas.
The reforms are terrible. The health reform is terrible because it goes a lot of years back to what's really working in Colombia. A 30-year regression in healthcare if we let them take private sector healthcare providers away from us. This is going to the abyss. The same with the pensions reform. Everything Gustavo Petro is proposing is nonsense. For this reason, we're fighting here today.
And finally, in our news, in Benghazi, Libyans are celebrating Eid al-Fitr, which marks the end of the Islamic fasting month of Ramadan, with prayers, family visits, while others attend a festival where locals wear traditional costumes and engage with traditional dance and music, regardless of the current political instability in the country. Salman Asib has more.
Libyans celebrated Eid al-Fitr holiday on different days this year because of bitter political splits that persist despite years of peace efforts. However, what was separated by politics was brought together by culture and identity, as during the celebration of Eid al-Fitr, many Libyans attended the annual festival, where locals wear traditional customs and engage with the traditional dance and music. The festival started as a simple meeting point for people to take pictures during Eid 5 years ago, and now developed into a traditional song and dance festival that takes place on an annual basis.
This gathering today is a call for the unity of Libyans around one of God's teachings, and is a chance for the unity of people away from political divisions. They are united by happiness of this Eid, and it's a call for unity for the sake of one country.
For their part, religious authorities in East Libya, aligned with the parliament which is based there, said they had sighted the crescent moon on Thursday, making it the last day of fasting and setting Friday as Eid.
We have to adhere to what the Institute of Jurisprudence says. It is the base of everything. No one saw the crescent, and as we heard, many countries did not see it as well. We are the witnesses who saw it.
Despite the current instability in the country, people in areas controlled by Eastern factions appear to be universally celebrating Eid on Friday. People living in Tripoli and some other parts of the West seem split between those celebrating and those still fasting.
The Libyan custom is a basic pillar of a unified Libyan identity and depicts a portrait of areas around Libya. It's among the things that we should cling. It's among the things that we should cling to, and every year we congratulate ourselves during Eid for this great identity, preserving it from extinction.
During the festival, Libyans show the world how optimistic they are during such a political crisis in the country. With the beat of traditional folk music, the audience performed the Kaska dance, an artistic painting that reflects ancient customs and traditions.
And with this, our program comes to an end. For more, visit our social media platforms. From me and the rest of the team, thank you for tuning in. Till next time, take care.